This is Darth Vader, and I would be honored if you would join me as well as Eric6761 as we discuss how my fate and the fate of the entire galaxy would have changed if Yoda knew that my mother was in danger. Let us go back to that fateful night where I am having nightmares about my mother suffering through the Force. She calls out to me in pain. This vision causes such a shockwave through the Force that even Yoda can feel it, and he decides to get off of his slimy green ass and do something about it. He tracks me down to Naboo. He finds me in Padme's bedroom. The first thing he says to me is, "Discuss this later we will. However, a greater matter before us is." And we discuss the visions that I had about my mother. So he confirms that they are true. We go to Tatooine together, and we find her tied up and tortured by the Tusken Raiders on the brink of death. However, this time, since Yoda is with me, with the flick of his wrist, he extends a force healing spell, bringing her back to full health, and we escape the Tusken Raider camp together. I ask him to explain to me how to heal people through the Force, and he says he will teach me, but at a later time. For now, we bring my mother back to the Lars homestead, where she is able to make it home safely, and we go back to the Jedi Temple to discuss this in Yoda's office. We discuss the attachments that I have with Padme, as well as with my mother, and while Yoda is initially disappointed that I have formed unsanctioned attachments while serving as a Jedi, he cannot deny the fact that these attachments allowed me to feel her suffering through the Force. And I explained to him that the fact that these attachments allowed me to end someone's suffering means that attachments are not a bad thing, and that passion does not always lead to suffering. Yoda rubs his chin for a minute and thinks about it, and he decides that while he's not yet ready to change the Jedi code, he would like to accompany me more and see how my attachment style makes me stronger in the Force. So instead of just leaving me by myself with Obi-Wan, Yoda accompanies us on several of our missions. And through it, he learns that I use the strength of love in order to accomplish great things in the Force. This influences him to make the Jedi less of a political matter, and so he decides to go with us. We go to the Outer Rim, and we decide to start ending suffering for oppressed peoples, just like Shmi Skywalker. So we end up freeing slaves on Tatooine, as well as on other planets, bringing liberty all around the galaxy, less focused on the Clone Wars and the politics of the Republic, and more focused on just loving the poor and ending human suffering, and alien suffering as well. This causes some of the planets that were going to join the Federation to instead not join, because now that the Jedi are ending their suffering, they really have nothing to complain at the Republic about, and they decide to just sit it out and not join the Federation overall. The Federation being unable to replenish their troops from disgruntled planets that are full of suffering people weakens them as an organization, it crushes them financially, and it causes most of the leaders to either surrender or go into hiding. Meanwhile, my bond with Yoda gets stronger by the day because he's actually being a good and compassionate master. So he decides to hold a conference with the rest of the Jedi Council where he tells them about my relationship with my mother as well as that with Padme. He also explains how these relationships made me more perceptive through the Force and allowed me to end suffering. And after hours of intense negotiations with the rest of the Jedi Council, he decides to change the rules, and they vote in favor of allowing attachments as long as those attachments are not used in a dark side or abusive kind of manner. Attachments are now allowed in the Jedi Order. The second order of business is they move the Jedi Temple to Tatooine because being in the Outer Rim and less embroiled in the politics of Coruscant allows the Jedi to think with a clear mind and perceive the Force more purely and just be in touch with the downtrodden and ending their human suffering. This allows my relationship with Padme to develop in a more slow but healthy manner. Let's put a pin here and talk about something. The whole reason why I became in a relationship with a woman 10 years older than me was because I had just lost my mother and I needed that motherly figure in my life, and so I formed a toxic bond with Padme that was forged through fear of loss. However, in this scenario, because I do not fear loss and I know how to heal people because Yoda taught me Force Heal, and because I am more psychologically healthy, my relationship with Padme develops more slowly and more organically and more more deeply. I am able to love her, and there is a complete trust between us. This obviously causes trouble for Palpatine because now that the Federation of Independent Systems is weaker and less of a threat to the Republic, and he is less able to turn me to the dark side of the Force, things are slipping out of his grasp very quickly. At the next Senate meeting, the Senate is ready to vote to strip Palpatine of his emergency powers when all of a sudden there's an explosion in the Senate pod, killing several senators. General Grievous and Count Dooku arrive and kidnap Palpatine. The clone troopers are in hot pursuit, but they are too late. Grievous kidnaps Palpatine and takes him to the Invisible Hand. Yoda, Obi-Wan, and myself are called to the Invisible Hand to rescue the Chancellor, just like in the Battle of Coruscant. However, this time, because Yoda is with me and because I am more psychologically healthy, we're able to arrest Dooku instead of cutting off his hands and me just decapitating him before I learn the truth about Palpatine. Obi-Wan does not accompany me to fight Dooku. He instead goes and dispatches General Grievous in 30 seconds. Meanwhile, back at the Senate, because the Senate have lost some of their co-workers and they are living in fear, that fear causes them to vote even more emergency powers to Palpatine, making him stronger. Back at the Jedi Temple, we interrogate Dooku, but because he is not a snitch, he is unwilling to tell us who the Sith Lord is. So we pry his mind very deeply, all of us working in unison, reaching deep into his mind. We start to see visions. We see him talking to the hooded figure. We see him plotting against the Republic with the hooded figure, and we realize that he's playing both sides. And then we finally see that the Sith Lord is Palpatine. But we keep digging, and we find that Palpatine had plans to turn me to the dark side of the Force. This is a terrifying discovery. The Jedi Council meet and discuss what the next move is, and we decide to spy on the Chancellor and dig up evidence of his guilt. And this time, I actually willingly agree to spy on the Chancellor because I am convinced that he is evil. So I meet with him in the Opera House, and I pretend to be on his side. I kneel before him and take the title Darth Vader, and I act like I am going to do his will. However, the minute the Emperor goes to sleep, I go into his office and steal all of his files and download them. The next Senate meeting, where Palpatine is going to discuss the plan and is going to frame the Jedi for corruption, that is when I show up. I take center stage, and I have R2 take over the hologram systems, and I play all of the evidence that Palpatine has been playing both sides and that he is secretly guilty. This causes every single senator who has just lost friends and family in the previous explosion to draw their guns on Palpatine. They aim them at him, ready to end him, and they basically try to rain on him with bullets. And he tries to jump away, but I use the Force to slow him down, and he just gets utterly eviscerated in blaster fire. He is dead. The Senate gave him his own Order 66. Back at the Jedi prison in the Jedi Temple, the ghost of Qui-Gon is able to negotiate with Count Dooku and convince him why he should join the light side of the Force. And after the Jedi Council and I, combining our powers together to use Force Sever to sever Dooku of his Force powers permanently, we release him, and he goes back to Serrano and basically lives in nobility with his family, quietly, not involved in Jedi, Sith, or galactic politics for the rest of his life. I marry Padme, and this time, because attachments are allowed, Yoda officiates over the ceremony, Obi-Wan is my best man, and Ahsoka Tano is the flower girl. We retire to Naboo to raise our kids quietly. Our kids, when they're grown, will join the Jedi Order just like I did. The Galactic Republic decides to disband because there's really no need for such a powerful organization, and they realize that one man was about to control the entire galaxy. That is too much power concentrated in one place. So basically all of the systems decide to disband and have independent power over their own affairs. And Ponda Baba and Dr. Cornelius Evanson ambush Kit Fisto, kill him, and eat him as a fried calamari dinner. And that is how things would turn out. Let me know what you think in the comments below.